us. That's great. So everyone can hear us. I hope you guys are really excited today because you're not just going to get a chance to look at one workflow, but two workflows. So I hope you guys are excited about that. Looks like we got people joining in, calling in from all over. Um, so let's go ahead and kick this off. So for those of you that haven't been to a workflow live yet, this is a recurring live series that we try to do every 2 weeks. And the series is all about answering one of the biggest questions we see firm owners ask. And that is, how are other firms building their workflows and then using those workflows to achieve their goals? So today, we're not only going to walk through two different workflows and show you how they were set up and why, but if you actually like them, you'll be able to take them home with you today and implement them in your firm or customize them to fit your processes. Because ultimately what the goal we're trying to do is to help other accountants build better workflows through community and collaboration. So that being said, given it's all about community and it's all about collaboration, if you do happen to get value out of today's webinar, and believe in that too, that we can truly build better workflows through community collaboration, I want to ask a favor of everyone. And that favor is to ask you to also share your workflows if you have workflows that you believe are worth sharing. And where I would love for you to share that is our community driven template library. So if you haven't seen that yet, I'm going to share my screen real quick. Screen, let's do my window. There we go. And you'll actually see this. There's you can access the template library. There's a little thing in the bottom right-hand corner. If you click that, get free templates, but it'll take you here. And this is our template community-driven library. This is where real firm owners, just like you, go and share their processes for how they're doing bookkeeping, tax work, advisory work, or other types of work. So you can get ideas for how to improve your workflows or even use them in your firm, right? You can view those workflows, you can download them in Excel, or you can add them to your Financial Sense account. So if you think this is exciting, we'd love for you to share this as well, because the only way this really works is if we all share together and collaborate together. And the more you share, the more others are willing to share. And the more others share, the more you and everyone else benefits. And if you're interested in actually doing that, you can do that from inside your Financial Sense account. So if you're an FC user, you can go into your account, you can click your templates tab over here. And then if you find a workflow that you feel like is worth sharing, you can easily click share template right here. And then you'll see this option to share it to the library. And when you do that, we will review it and we'll push it to the library. So that's an ask I have for everyone here today. If you get value out of this this webinar, we ask that you share your templates and really help contribute to the mission of building better workflows together through community and collaboration. So I'm going to stop my share and let's kick this off. So today we have Jenna Rodriguez. She is with Pendante and Company, and she's going to be sharing two workflows with us today. So before we get started with the workflows, Jenna, I would love for you to tell us a little bit about you and the firm before we get started.
Sure. I'm actually in a small firm, Southeastern PA, as I mentioned earlier, for those who have missed it. We are in a firm that really tries to look for small business connections so we can help those owners. We do personal returns as well. We do a good bit of tax, but we really focus on those additional services and consultation for businesses as well. And we are actually only in our second tax season using Financial Sense. We see the owner starting to phase out, and I would be picking up more of the management level stuff. So I was trying to figure out ways we could actually streamline our work, take some of the administrative time off of our table, and cut down on the inter-office emails of this is ready, this isn't, what's the status. So we came into Financial Sense, and we only started in January, and we used it last tax season. So it was a very quick startup with basic template setup, but they functioned and really helped us through that tax season. And now we've added some additional bells and whistles through all the additional options in Financial Sense, and we're in our second year. So that's kind of our background with Financial Sense as well as our business focus.
Perfect. Well, Tell us. So, what are the two templates you're going to be sharing with us today?
We actually are sharing tax templates because it is, even though we don't like to share and say it out loud, it is that time of year of tax season. And amazingly, we're already into March. So I'm sure a lot of us are starting to realize, oh, business deadlines are coming. But also the personal is very quick to follow. And hopefully our at least template flow will make sense to those, or at least help you think through your template setups as well. I'll do a quick screen share and
Yeah,
walk through.
let's jump in and just let everyone know if you have any questions while Jenna's going through the templates, please drop them in the chat. I'm going to try to cover them throughout the conversation.
Yep. So I'm actually in our templates window that Shram had led you to earlier. And you'll see our list of templates. And right now they're set up as alphabetical order, but that works for us. We actually use the tax form number as our reference. So we're going to start and hopefully spend a little bit more time under the 1040 template. Where this started as, like I said, we came in January. We did not really have a lot of setup or planning time. So where we started to try and figure out where to start with the template is literally the flow of the return through our staff. What are the stages? And of course, the client tasks we have not set up in the template because for 1040, we actually fill that out per client because each client is so unique. Some people are retired, they only have Social Security, no W-2. Some people are working, some people have rentals. So we really determined that the setup of that, because it's not very generic, isn't super helpful when you translate it into the individual. You
Mm.
could opt to set up what you have for 90% of your clients and always remove what you don't need per client. That's just the approach we took. Into
So
the
it's
team tasks, yes,
just to confirm. So basically, what you're saying is you didn't put you're still using the client tasks, but you
yes,
don't put them on the template because it's so customized client to client. You just wait till you create a project out of the
client,
template to add
yes,
that in. Okay.
exactly. So some clients could have 4 client tasks,
Hmm.
some could have 22. So it
It's a
really
lot.
it really depends on the client, what their
Okay.
needs are. So now getting into team tasks, again, we took the flow of the actual work of the return. You can't do anything until you receive the information. And what we do is we do client tasks, but as we know, not all clients necessarily jump into technology. So we still are in the position that we give our clients the option. So some people may drop off or mail in. So if it's received, we make sure to change the project start date because all of our tasks, you'll see in the second column here, our due date of tasks are all dependent on the start date. So if we get our start date internally, we say as a default, which I can share real quick, we actually do have default settings set up in the templates. All individual returns are always due April 15th. It's very straightforward. There's no fiscal years, but we also have the default every 12 months for repeating. So we don't have to set that up when we're per client, trying again to save time and admin. We also make a note that our start date, we always prioritize business because we do small business. We prioritize business first. So our standard internal start date is March 16th, but that's how the project is set up until we touch it. But once we get the information, we do backdate that start date. So then our internal tasks are actually triggered at a reasonable time frame after we receive the information. So that's how our tasks start dates. So scanning client information, and you'll see automations are set up. We do the tags if I jump in here. So we weren't using the tasks before, so we do need to actually adjust some of these. We would put it manually if we didn't get the information, but now we don't have to do that because Financial Sense with client tasks are very smart. And it says that you're waiting on information until they check off all their tasks. So we do use tasks just to be able to, or tags to quickly know. And again, once we scanned or received on the client task the information, it will update the tasks. Our second year, we didn't do this the first year, we decided to do a little bit of automated client communication. So once we actually get some level of information from the client, we now have an automation for an email. And we've developed an email that will insert the client name as well as the project reference. So the tax year will be filled in and we at least acknowledge receipt. So if some of those clients that mail items in, they actually will know that we've received them without us taking any action. So that cuts down again on more emails because the client will say, hey, did you get my information? Or we have to think to notify clients that like that notification. So we've added that automation that's newer for this year. So we add bells and whistles each tax season and trying to use more and more of the features of Financial Sense. Follow-up information, because you're always missing something on a tax return. We actually break it down with a couple reminders just to say, remind it. We might snooze it for 4 days after we do a follow-up. Again, if they're not participating in client tasks, if they are, we really don't need to follow up because the client tasks will send those automated reminders, whatever time frame we do. Could be 14 days usually for individuals. Unless we're getting closer to that due date, we might change that. So again, the scan, we have a routing internal. It's a reminder to do admin stuff. And in preparing the return, it kind of reminds us, pulling figures in, you need to actually review it compared to prior year. So it's our reminder as we prepare the return, don't forget to do these items. So that way we actually get those items taken care of. Consider the estimated tax payments. It's always good to remind yourself year to year, especially early in tax season. You don't have that rote routine down yet for the first several returns that you do. So these are always good reminders as you're working through. And again, for our reviewer, either the partner or managing tax person, it again reminds you, upload. We create PDF copies that we actually do a stamped PDF signature. So internally, we have documented a complete document. Again, just our specialized procedure. Some people may not. You could always edit this to fit your firm's flow. And packaging for our admin person and reminding her to send the mailing receipt for the bookkeeping input for the expenses. The most important part, I think we would all agree, is invoicing the client. We don't want to forget to do that. And again, we have our e-filing to make sure that when we get back the returns, again, receiving the 8879s and getting those signatures and confirming that they actually were filed, they weren't rejected or anything along those lines. And the other automated email I kind of skipped over was once the return is reviewed, we again added that extra client communication that we have notifying the client it's in process of packaging. You should see it within a week so that they know. And again, cutting down on those emails from clients. So it's kind of a quick go through. And if anything popped up, Sharon, that you would want me to respond to at this point for that quick go through?
Yeah, well, before I do that, I really wanted to point out, I really liked how, this is actually pretty robust for what we typically see with a lot of our users. You're using the automations, using the template settings, you're using the due date constraints, you're using the roles. And when you add all that in, it really does make a big difference. Like, for example, the roles. The old way it used to be is where and someone mentioned this actually in the comments, the old way used to be where when you could just assign an individual team member to template, but now we have the roles, so you can change who is in that role as you're creating the work, or maybe as your firm grows, you have more people or someone leaves the firm. So it just makes it easier to create work. The due date constraints keeps your due days in chronological order without having to set them up each time. The automations are great, the template settings. I'm curious if people had any questions around the automations, the template settings, the due date constraints, the roles. But I really like this template. And if anyone's looking to improve their 1040 tax return process, I really think this is a great one to build off of. And I don't know if we have, like, Davida, if you can share, Davita's in the background, if you can share the template with like a little pop-up like you did the library, or I'll drop it here in the chat. if anyone likes this 1040 tax return template. But any questions, please drop them in. But I really like what you did, Jenna. Let's see.
And I will fill in while you look, Sharam, is two things that are different from the template online. That was our first iteration of our first year using it. This year, we added those email automations. So just keep in mind, again, you could time it based on the step that makes the most sense to you. And the other change that we did for this year was we actually used that default template settings, way faster setting up projects under clients.
Okay, someone asked me, this is going to be recorded. This is recorded, and this will go in all of our social channels. Someone loved your example of how some clients still send in paper documents. Surprisingly, that still happens today. Let's see. I see some feature suggestions, but we'll come back to that. I'll reach out to you individually on those, Andrew. But I don't believe I see any specific questions. Was there any specific questions around the template?
And we could do a project setup. We have an office client I could do that with. That's fine with me.
So there is one thing I did want to highlight, because you talked about how you started simple in your first tax season, and then after your first tax season, then you started to add more automation and updates. And I actually recommend that if someone's new to Financial Sense, don't try to add in all the automations and stuff in the beginning, because it's better to get a feel for your flow and how things work for your firm, and then how you want to use those automations. And you kind of need to use Financial Sense a little bit before you do that. You don't want to try to do it all at once. But I think one of the challenges we have right now with Financial Sense is we don't have an easy way. And this was something someone suggested. I think it was you, Andrew, where you want a way where if you're going to follow that process, you can push the changes from the templates to existing projects. So you don't have to go and update them all individually. And that is something we're working on building out in Q2 of this year. So for the people that want to go back and improve their templates over time and their processes, they'll be able to add those changes to live projects created from those templates soon. And that's going to be pretty powerful. So there is a question from Michelle. She's asking you if you can go back to your time frame settings.
Yep. So there's two pieces of that, right? Under the default template settings, we're selecting the time frame, what due date is assigned to this automatically, the recurring, and then the start date. So your start date default for every single time you set up this project for any client can be chosen, doesn't have to be. Business returns, if you have lots of fiscal years, may not make sense. And again, the roles that Sharam had mentioned, we have given people, we know the admin is always this person. The reviewer could change, so we don't have that assigned. I do at least the invoicing side, so I just tag myself on that. If you don't know, you could leave it blank. If it's always the same person, you want it pre-filled. Again, quicker template sign up, which we could look at quickly. The date constraints per task. So when you click in and you're setting up the tasks, and I actually have a request for improvement. When you're setting up a project on the fly, you can't do this, but in your template, you can. So you can do a due date constraint. You can say within 1 day of whatever start date I set, I want this task to have that due date. You can edit this and you could build it backwards if you want to from the due date. So you can say for the last task, I want it done 7 days before the due date. And then you would work backwards from there. But we decided to do it from the start date. So we want 1 day after the project start date, because we would fix the start date with received client information. And then you see 3 days after, and then within 5 days, we're already communicating with the client. Within 9 days, we should be definitely in preparation. We're generous with our deadlines. Usually it's much quicker. And it just gives you at least a quick task due date reference when you set up that project. So I hope that hit the date question that you were referencing. And then should I just do that quick project setup, Sharon?
Yeah, I think it'd be great if you were to create a project. from this template, people could see how the template settings and the due date constraints all populate.
Yep. So this is our office project client. Obviously, we have internal stuff as projects, but assume we're under a client and you go under to create a project and we use from template. And for that 1040 return, when we do it, again, just for the one, if you're new to Financial Sense, you could do many clients and pick your whole group of 1040 clients if you want, which is how we didn't have choice. We had to set up quickly starting in January for tax season. So for one client, and again, you'll see the due date's already populated. I don't have to enter that because I use the template defaults. So again, saving some of that admin time. Again, the start date set up under the template. If these were blank, you'd have to pick it every time you set up this template under a client project. The repeats are already done. Accounting period, of course, for tax returns would always be annual. And let's say it's for this past tax season. So you would do the year end of December 24. And when you see the next screen, that's where the roles come in. Less choosing. So saving that admin, even those extra 5 clicks will build up after you're building project after project. So once you pick, which everybody's going to get notification now that I'm setting up a project, but that's okay. And when you create the project, again, it sits with the first date. So again, remember, the default due date, start date is right here, March 16th. The first task is set for one day after that. So you'll see March 17th, and the next one is 2 days after, and so on and so forth. So it predetermines these due dates. But since, let's say we got the client documents today, we want to change that start date. So under the actions, you can edit and just back your start date up to today. And once I hit done here, you'll see March 4th now, tomorrow, one day after, because I set it as, well, the 3rd, the day before today. But you'll see how the task dates regenerate to start because they're all tagged to that start date. So if that addresses the template setup for the other person.
Yeah, that's, I didn't even know that you could do that. So I learned something new today from this webinar. But no, that's really great. Like when you use those due date constraints on the tasks, if you update the start date, if you update the due date, whichever it's based off of, it will automatically update the task due dates to reflect that, which is great. Someone asked what is your recurring? So you had 12 months, right? Every 12 months you do default recurrence?
Yeah.
Makes sense.
And again, you could always edit that. If it's different than what the template is, you would just change that here. The template is whatever you use 90% of the time for that function. So each client may be slightly different in the templates, but you want to design the template for the 90%, not the 100%, because nobody's ever exactly in the same, so to speak.
So, Jenna, there's another question. Someone asked, isn't everything showing up as March 16th on your dashboard then with first start date? And I guess
it does.
Is that not an issue
until we get the data, because we don't know when people are going to give us their information, and we can't start their work until we get their information. So what we do for follow-up, which I'm not going to show because of client confidentiality, is you could go through your dashboard, filter by the project 1040, scan through, and at the bottom, if there's still no tags on that, it's not started, then this time of year, if you haven't seen anything from them, that's the clients we manually follow up with. So it's kind of, it does all group it, but it's not necessarily a bad thing because who's not sent you anything or has not contacted you.
That's a good point. Okay. Well, that was great. Thank you for walking through the actual creation. It's good to see all the settings play out when creating the project and on the task due dates. I don't believe there was any more questions about this process, so we can move on to the next one.
Okay. So again, back in our templates, and we do have a business return, which is very similar. So we're still, and we threw in template tasks. I may actually update this. I'm wondering, probably a fair number of people have some level of electronic access possibly to the accountant access to their books if people have books online, which hopefully most people do. Um, and a lot of times you're not getting statements from clients. So this may be more relevant of 1099s if they issue them, if you don't help prepare them. Payroll reports, because you want to kind of prove out their payroll expense versus whatever their books say. Fixed asset additions for the figuring out depreciation. So that may be more likely. Again, you could set this up for 90% and make use of the client tasks. And in the client tasks, since we see this, you can choose the auto reminders. I default to do not send because what we do is clients that don't participate in upload and client tasks, we actually still set them up because it gives us a checklist. And if they send in paper items, we could still use it as a to-do list for the client, and we let the client know that upload is not required. You could simply use this as a to-do list so you know what we're still missing, and it will then automatically remind them. So we try to still encourage them to use it as a to-do list. Again, still saving admin on our part, even if they don't upload. At least we can use the automation to remind them. And we have the upper level so we can edit our templates or the default template for the email notification, which we're fine with what Financial Sense does. So that saved us time too. So the flow of the actual business is very similar because you still have to get some type of information, follow up on information, ask those questions. We also included, since businesses, again, first year, we did a checklist of did we receive the stuff. Now we're starting to use client tasks, so we don't really need the detail under the receive. But if you are not jumping right into client tasks, because again, like Sharam had said too, it's sometimes easier to go in bite-sized pieces. So if you're newer and you're not doing client tasks quite yet, because it's a little overwhelming, you could always do at least a basic receive client information. So if you have part of it, it reminds you what to follow up with. The benefit, the difference that we start seeing is you want to kind of be more specific in, you want to look at, what are we looking at before we even start the return? We want to make sure, did the balance sheet from last year change? So this is, again, reminding people that, especially early on, when you're not doing tax returns, you're not in that rote thought process. You want to make sure that, did they actually reconcile everything and verify that? Do the reports match with? So it's just, again, a reminder of what you kind of take naturally, but sometimes you just need to be reminded, especially when you're later in tax season and starting to do the burnout thing. The other piece that we really did differently is for packaging the returns. We were much more specific for the admin person, especially because we actually had a new admin last year. She actually found this very helpful. It reminds, if we prepare the shareholder K1, just file it in the client file. We don't need the business to just send that K1 out because they already have it with their tax preparer. If we don't, we make sure that we make it easy for the client as much as we can, pre-addressed envelopes, so on and so forth. So again, a very specific reminder of the tasks that are unique to when the admin packages the business return. So we really tried to break that down more specifically for the admin person. So that's probably the biggest difference between the two. Again, we follow it with our e-filings to make sure that everything is actually filed and completed before we close out the project.
Okay. So a lot of similarities with last info, the automations and the settings and the due date constraints. This is really good though. Any questions about this template? Or any questions in general for Jenna? Looks like we might have gotten most of them answered on the last template you shared. These are really good though. Very well built. Again, I would say, like, I've looked at a lot of templates, and these are top tier compared to what I've typically seen. Like the way you're using all the aspects, you're using the automations, you're using the due date constraints, you're using the subtasks, you're using the template settings, And when you have all that working together, it really does allow you to move a lot faster. And like, it's not even just saving time. You know, you talked about using the due date constraints and all that, so you don't have to set up yourself, but it's also about quality control.
Mm.
When you have someone else setting up the work, you want to make sure they're not making mistakes, assigning the wrong people, putting the wrong dates.
Mhm.
And it really helps do that. So if you found value in these templates, definitely go check them out in the template library. You should see a little pop-up in the bottom right where you can view these templates and some of the other templates that Jenna has shared to the template library. Um, but if there are any other questions, feel free to drop them in now. Looks like there might be something that just came into Q&A. This is recorded, and we will be sharing the recording, and you'll be also able to access it in the Financial Sense user group on Facebook, and I believe on YouTube as well. Let's see. There isn't a way to merge duplicate clients in Financial Sense yet. Feature request. Okay. Well, Michelle, if you let me hear. I'll drop the Financial Sense user group link to you. So if you are in the Financial Sense user group, where you can collaborate with other users, ask questions, you can join it here. I dropped that in the chat for you all. But okay, I think that's it. So I just want to remind everyone, if you got value today, like what we're trying to do here is help accounting firms everywhere build better workflows through collaboration and community. So we highly recommend, if you want to be a part of that, if you want to build better workflows, go to our template library, share templates to the template library, check out the template library. It's a great place to learn how other firms are doing it, but to really be a part of this. And really, our goal with this template library is to build a template library of thousands of templates from bookkeepers and accountants and CPAs from all across the world working together to build better workflows so we can all achieve our goals. And I think right now we're close to 200 templates. It's growing. We're seeing people contribute, which is exciting. And we're going to keep doing this every 2 weeks. So be sure to join us. Jenna, thank you so much for joining us. This has been great. You've had some amazing templates. You've shared some amazing insights. So I think a lot of people got a value out of this today.
Great. I appreciate it. I was happy to be here.
Okay. On that note, hopefully we'll see all of you guys in 2 weeks. Take care, everyone.